themselves that way because they don't walk off of these. The thing that kids don't understand is when it's something like a character on TV. I don't know about Nicki Minaj, so I don't like her, but there are enough of these high-powered hip-hop moguls who rap and speak like idiots on their records and then walk off and go down to their boardroom to manage their multi-million-dollar corporations with proper English and a whole different image. They are selling that, and the consumers are eating it up.
Profile to you ladies. There are very loud binary opinions surrounding the sexualization of women in the media. On one hand, it can be seen as a way to liberate and empower. Conversely, it can be seen as devaluating and depreciation. Right? That was correct? Depreciate? Okay. Towards women. What are your views on the sexualization of women in the media? And I'd like to open up the mics to any of the ladies who haven't spoken yet. Amelia.
So I think the femininity and sexuality that's portrayed in the media is very complicated because, as you said, like it can be seen on one hand as empowering, but it's also demeaning in a lot of other ways. And I think it can be extra complicated for non-white women because that predominant image is a white beauty. So that's what's the standard in a lot of different ways, or a lot of different media outlets. That's the standard. So I think it can be extra hard to navigate if you right off the bat don't even fit that descriptor. So it's yeah, I don't know. I feel like a lot of women say that being sexual and owning their sexuality is empowering, and I think it can be, but it's how it's consumed. We have to be cognizant of that as well. So if it's consumed in a way that's sexualizing, then it's ultimately, I think, a disservice.
I feel like I'm going to bridge the last question with this question. The majority of what I teach, it's kind of all over the place, but I use TV a lot to kind of talk about the politics of representation, how people of color are depicted, what stereotypes are being reinforced, in what ways are they being challenged, as a way to open up space in classrooms to talk about racism, to talk about how the media, what we consume in television for pleasure is not separate from our lived lives, and how we're kind of making assumptions about people in the real world. And when I think about what that means in terms of the super sexualization of black women on television, I was reading and preparing for a class on Nicki Minaj's Anaconda video, and how there's so much debate around that video because it's so hard to reconcile a woman who is desiring and not ashamed, and then a lot of anxiety around how might her expression and of feminism feed into stereotypes. I find that it's such a bind that seems just like I don't know how you get out of that except to talk about it.
So before I begin my input, I just want to thank AfroFest and Stand for putting together this panel and inviting an Arab Muslim woman on the panel to kind of give a different look to the questions. I would have to agree with Amelia. I strongly believe it's the way it's consumed. I feel the sexualization of women and the way it's consumed in the media has to play a huge role in the way that we take it in. I come from a very religious background. I'm not identifiable or as easily identified as Muslim. I don't wear a hijab, but I am Muslim, and we tend to be a little bit more on the conservative spectrum. So when I came to university, I'm in political science, so not in women's studies. It was kind of a shock to me to see I guess the empowerment of women's sexuality, something that I wasn't used to really seeing, and I think that for me has changed my look on women in general, and I feel like I know my parents aren't too happy with that sometimes, but it's a way, it is empowering, but at the same time, it's different for everybody, so I don't want to be speaking on, of course, like hijabi Muslims, because I'm not one, and I don't like to speak on behalf of other people, so I'm speaking on behalf of myself. And I would have to say that it's definitely the way it's consumed, and definitely the way that we also portray it. And I know, again, like being a Muslim woman, it's rather difficult to kind of be out there all sexualized, because it's not something that is commonly practiced and commonly advertised for us. So to see women in this light, to me at first was extremely shocking. But as having friends in women's studies, and I'm a strong feminist and I support women as much as I can. So I mean, if it makes you feel good and if it makes you feel proud, then do it.
I got up this morning and I watched TV before Good Morning America started at 7 o'clock. I watched I Love Lucy. Any of you know that show? Their beds were not even connected together. On TV, people did not even sleep in the same bed, white or black. It creates a conundrum to say that it's over-sexualization of black people, because it's over-sexualization of everybody in the media. And at the same time, you say, okay, well, finally, they're considering black women to be sexual beings other than just the maid or whatever they are in the background. But everything is over-sexualized. So at the one hand, you say, well, we finally arrived, we can take our clothes off and consider it to be beautiful. And the other hand, it's like, well, every time there's a black woman on the program now, they're in bed. But everybody's in bed. So it's hard to say specifically, okay, are black women being over-sexualized? You can take a look at who is winning awards, and they had an article last week that, you know, it's maids or people getting, slaves, or all these very extreme characters that actually win the awards for black women in they have all this Academy Award problem and everything now. But basically, the over-sexualization is of everything in the media now. So it's hard to say, don't sexualize us and then say include us at the same time. It just creates a problem.
Yeah. I tend to support sexualization of women and men in the media, but at times it tends to perpetuate the negative aspect. When you look at black women, the way it is portrayed and the way people see it and interpret it is very different. They tend to see us more in a very negative way. I'll give an example. In one of the things that have been spoken of about Donald Trump, the way he talked about black women as they are good for, good in bed and all sorts of, nasty things. To me, it's very insulting, because we are more than that. So you find that when you look at some of these ways we are being portrayed in the media, we are not portrayed in a very positive sexuality form, but rather we are portrayed in a more negative form. And I think we need to move away from that.
Just to add about, someone brought up Nicki Minaj, and I think in terms of reclaiming your sexuality publicly as a form of empowerment, I think, at least in the things that I've read online in terms of like people commenting on things, if a white woman is reclaiming her sexuality, that's empowering. But if a black woman tries to do it, it seems to be more suspect, and it seems to be, oh, she's playing into stereotypes to get ahead, and that kind of critique is, I think you see it more for women of color than you do for a white woman, and I think that's problematic as well, to say that it's okay for this person to reclaim their sexuality, but it's not okay for this person.
I actually think it goes to, it's not just about in the media, and it's not even about black women versus white women. I think it's a man versus women thing, because when you're looking at it and there is, let's say, a male recording artist and he is, there's a very sexy video and he is shirtless and so on, that's just the way it's done. And then when there is a female contemporary in a very similar video and she's scantily clad, then she is being overly sexual.
So even when we look at some of the depictions of black men who are shirtless and things like that, a lot of times that is more from the the actual art being sold to white folks, and it's still about a fantasy about black men, and it's still about how black men are depicted and to be consumed or to be used. I don't think that it's the same kind of empowerment a lot of times. So.
Hello, ladies. So, Linda, you had mentioned the previous question, that we need to focus more not so much on the character, not so much on the character, but more on the fact that they have these roles. So in terms of Nicki Minaj, I have a bit of a problem. I do think that she is objectified sexually, and I think she plays into it. But on the flip side, I also understand that it's a market, and she is having to sell her body in order to get to the fame that she has gotten to. So I just want to know, how do women succeed without being overly sexual, but somewhat reserved, but then being empowered in their sexuality and then still not being judged? Where do you think this line of distinction kind of lies for women? And not just black women, I mean women across the board.
It's a balance, right? It's of playing neither extreme, or just, and I don't want to say playing either extreme as if the extremes don't exist, because when you allow people to be their full range of who they are. But I think it's that one is neither a vampire nor an object to be consumed, but it's more like a partner, or more like meeting other people on the level of people meeting other people. I think that's a major part of that.
Somebody else mentioned that we need to stop praising men for sex and then demonizing women for sex. And I think that's a big part of navigating the kind of complexity that you're talking about. Because we live in a society where it's hyper-sexualized everywhere all the time, but on the same token, we're not allowed to talk about it. It's still really taboo in a lot of ways. So I think, demystifying all these stigmas around sex is a big part of helping women in public media to navigate the am I over-sexualized? Am I playing into stereotypes kind of thing?
I think what's also important to know is, Brittany, that was a really good question, but I think for Muslim women specifically, we tend to not be hyper-sexualized in most aspects. Not to speak for all of Muslim women, but a majority of us don't want to see ourselves kind of linked to the hyper-sexualization of women. And I feel like in order to empower women, we must opt out of ways that they're being hyper-sexualized. So if there's certain media outlets that do that, they should be, we shouldn't be supporting or watching or even discussing some of the things that come up because of that. Not so much ignoring the issue either, but having discussions like we're having now, I think it's very beneficial for those on the table and in the audience. But for Muslim women, for myself, speaking for myself and my sister, just because it's a little bit more personal, we are not really sexually active or sexualized in that kind of aspect, but we both consider ourselves successful in what we do. She's a teacher, and she's actually working her PhD now, and I think education plays a huge role in that as well. I think we need to educate women to stand up for themselves and to be able to represent themselves the way they want to be represented, and I'm an advocate for education. I think that's probably the most important thing we can do for women, is encouraging them to continue post-secondary education and to go into fields that are usually men-dominated, and kind of showing them what we got.
Just to add to what my fellow panelists have said, I think that the question was about trying to find that balance and trying to discern, being sexual, yet just finding that balance all across the board. And I think that the most important thing is just empowering girls. It starts from the home. It starts from childhood, and really teaching our daughters to embrace who they are, to be confident in who they are on all across the board. Not, as I said before, not just for how they look or, how they're supposed to be, ladylike, and we use terms like, you're a good girl, be a lady, and all of those things, but really empowering them to be intelligent, giving them the confidence that they need to fully embrace who they are, and knowing that we are sexual beings. We're not asexual. We should embrace our sexuality. We should see ourselves as being deserving and worthy of healthy relationships, of being respected by our partners, by our brothers, by our fathers, that we need to see positive representations as well of healthy relationships so that we understand what it means to have that balance of seeing ourselves as being beautiful, seeing ourselves as being sexual, but also intelligent, strong, all of those things, and not putting that distinction or dichotomy between, this is kind of what men do, or this is what little boys do, and this is what little girls do, but seeing ourselves as being one and having healthy, mutual respecting relationships. Thanks.
I personally, I don't like Nicki Minaj. I don't like her image. I don't like Nicki Minaj, and I don't like the Kardashians. I don't like all these people who sell themselves through the hyper-sexualization. And when you compare it to television, I can keep my 11-year-old niece from watching those TV shows. It is unfortunate that I can't keep her off of her tablet watching Nicki Minaj. It's just those choices that people make to promote themselves in that manner, I don't agree with at all. And I think it is important to have young black females to empower themselves. I know when I was young, I grew up in South Windsor. My family's from here. And I was in an all-white neighborhood. I never had any confidence in anything I did. Probably still don't to a certain extent. But my 11-year-old niece, she was going to her second tween party last Friday, and she came with a list. She said, "These are the guys that I'm going to reject when they ask me to dance tonight, because Jennifer told me that Bobby's going to ask me to dance and I'm not dancing with him." I said, "Well, why would you reject him?" Well, I said, "But you can do what you want. That's the whole point. You can reject him if you want to, but just don't be mean about it." When I was 11, I would have never had the confidence. First of all, nobody would have asked me to dance because I was the only black person in the room. But second of all, I would have never said, "I'm rejecting you." So we have to empower them. And those images are there. And when we talk about media, when we start talking about the music industry and the American way they portray black people, they're portraying themselves that way because they don't walk off of these. The thing that kids don't understand is when it's something like a character on TV. I don't know about Nicki Minaj, so I don't like her. But there are enough of these high-powered hip-hop moguls who rap and speak like idiots on their records and then walk off and go down to their boardroom to manage their multi-million-dollar corporations with proper English and a whole different image. They are selling that, and the consumers are eating it up. And every day I go into court, I have these little kids that come in a lot of, there's young African immigrant children, there's Canadians. They sit across from me and they're, "Yeah, what up, though, what up?" And they got their pants. I said, "First of all, pull up your pants, okay? Because this is Canada. I really have a problem with you watching TV, adapting the worst possible American stereotypical image and coming in here and telling me, well, you're black and I'm black, so, what can you do for me?" I said, "I can plead you today because you're guilty of those pants."